These are the women whose bodies were found in a hotel room in Belize over the weekend. Iman Mala, Waf El Arar, and Qatar Nakad, all lifelong friends who grew up together in Revere. Police say the young women checked into their beach hotel near San Pedro on Wednesday. A hotel staffer using a master key found their bodies in the hotel room just before noon on Saturday. Local police conducting the investigation say there's no sign of foul play and no obvious cause of death. A local news report indicated gummies and alcohol were found in the room. In Revere, the family of Waf El Arar tells me they are highly skeptical about what they're hearing from news reports in Belize. They say the families will pay for their own private autopsies once the bodies are returned to the United States. At City Hall, the mayor said in a statement he wants answers too. The statement reads in part, the Department of State issued a level 2 travel advisory for Belize in December due to an increased risk for crime, and we will exhaust all avenues, both domestic and abroad, to ensure a proper and fair analysis of this case. All three women shared Moroccan heritage, and prayers for all three women and their families will be offered up at the Association of Islamic Charitable Projects Mosque in Revere.
We believe firmly that one must be patient through trials like this, and that if we come together and support one another patiently through such trials, God will reward us for that patience.
The family tells me they just want the truth to come out. They say all three of the victims were young professionals with good jobs. They cannot understand how this happened.
Hundreds of homes in the Brazilian Amazon are at the risk of falling into a giant sinkhole, leading the local municipal government to declare a state of emergency. Around 1,200 residents of Buritucupo, a northeastern town in Brazil, are inching closer each day towards the widening abyss. Now, several buildings in the area have already been destroyed and many are on shaky ground.
Since the end of 2017, we have been saying that here it is a tragedy foretold long ago, and yet the authorities have done nothing for us until now. Residents are leaving their homes because they have no support from neither state nor federal government.
The giant sinkholes have been in the making for about 3 decades. The sandy nature of the soil underneath leaves it very vulnerable to erosion due to rains. Poor planning and deforestation have further eroded the ground under these roads. Residents have seen the sinkhole grow wider over the years and have edged closer to their homes. Now, over the last few months, heavy rains have only widened the sinkhole further. The residents fear more sinkholes could appear in the future, forcing many to abandon their homes and the town itself.
This is the danger. No one knows where this hole is opening underneath. When it opened, the barrier formed right in front of the house, at the base of the mango tree, and there was a loud crash that shook the house. So we need help to get out of danger, to house my husband there when he comes from the hospital, because he is sick.
This morning, Pew Research Center diving deep into religion and just how many Americans consider themselves religious.
Just a few hours ago, the Research Center released these findings on its third religious landscape survey. Archie Newher is in the live center this morning breaking down some of the key points. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Hannah and Kelly. National data from this study pretty much lines up with data here locally, but experts say there's one thing that really stands out here in Minnesota. 1 in 5 people in our state, including 18% in Minneapolis, they describe themselves as Lutheran. This is actually 6 times as large as the national average. Now, some other local findings: about 60% of people in Minneapolis describe themselves as Christians, compared to about 6% of people in Minneapolis who identify with religions like Islam, Buddhism, and Hinduism. 34% say they have no religion. So as we take a quick look at the national data here, 62% of adults, they describe themselves as Christian. 29% are not religiously affiliated, and 7% belong to other religions, mostly Judaism, Muslim, Buddhism, or Hindu. So it falls in line closely with Minnesota's numbers. Now, other key findings in this survey, research finds that young adults are far less religious than older adults, and religious upbringing seems to be declining.
Story in American religion is a story of decline. Over the long term, the share of people who are Christians has come down. The share of people who say they pray regularly has declined. The share of people who say they believe in God with absolute certainty has come down.
And as we look at over the short term here, data shows that the Christian population shows signs of stabilizing, and the growth of atheists has plateaued after a long period of steady growth. Now, although religious beliefs have fallen long term in the United States, a large majority of Americans still have a spiritual or supernatural outlook. Other findings show 86% of people believe they have a soul or a spirit. 83% of people believe in God or a universal spirit. So a lot of data to dive into with this survey here, but yeah, a lot of different key findings throughout the report here, guys.
Yeah, all right, Chinu, thanks for that. We appreciate it.
This, a federal judge is ordering the Trump administration to release billions in foreign aid in just hours. President Trump's executive order froze foreign aid for 90 days. Judge Amir Ali signed a temporary restraining order earlier this month, ruling the aid must be paid by 11:59 p.m. Wednesday. Today, Judge Ali said the administration has given no sign it plans to comply with that order.
Mr. President, on the EU tariffs, Mr. President, have you made a decision on what level you will seek on tariffs in the European Union?
We have made a decision. We'll be announcing it very soon, and it'll be 25%. Generally speaking, and that'll be on cars and all other things. And European Union is a different case than Canada, different kind of case. They've really taken advantage of us in a different way. They don't accept our cars. They don't accept essentially our farm products. They use all sorts of reasons why not. And we accept everything of them. And we have about a $300 billion deficit with the European Union. Now, I love the countries of Europe. I guess I'm from there at some point a long time ago, right? But indirectly, pretty directly too, I guess. But I love the countries of Europe. I love all countries, frankly, all different. But the European Union's it was formed in order to screw the United States. I mean, look, let's be honest. The European Union was formed in order to screw the United States. That's the purpose of it. And they've done a good job of it, but now I'm president.
Meanwhile, President Trump says tariffs on Canada and Mexico are back on the table starting next week. This comes after a month-long pause the president put in place to pressure the countries to do more to address illegal immigration. Washington correspondent Maddie Beer-Temple reports on what the president wants to see next from its neighboring allies.
President Trump said 25% tariffs on goods from Canada and Mexico will start next week.
We're on time with the tariffs, and it seems like that's moving along very rapidly.
The president suspended the start of import taxes earlier this month that he said the countries would face if they didn't address illegal immigration and drugs at the borders. Canada announced a new fentanyl czar, and Mexico deployed National Guard troops to the southern border.
And it's not just America's two largest trading partners expected to be hit with tariffs, but any country, the president says, unfairly taxes the U.S.
This is an abuse that took place for many, many years.
That's why he says reciprocal tariffs, which will match the tax rate other countries charge, are set to start as soon as April. The White House says it's about fairness.
To ensure that other countries are treating us the way we have always been treated.
A recent Yale University study estimates the reciprocal tariffs could cost households more than $2,000 extra a year.
Trumponomics sucks.
California Democratic Congressman Ted Lieu says tariffs will hurt consumers.
Increasing prices and increasing inflation.
Allies like French President Emmanuel Macron also warned against the move. Macron met with President Trump Monday, and on Fox News Channel's special report with Bret Baier said now is not the time.
We don't need a trade war. We need more prosperity together.
With our GMA cover story, the growing concerns in America's national parks after federal job cuts and how they could impact upcoming vacations, especially during the busy spring break and summer seasons. El Reshit back with the story. Hey, Ariel.
Hey there, George. Hundreds of millions of tourists visit our national parks each year, and spring break is really one of the most popular times to take in their majestic beauty. But with more than 1,000 park employees terminated in a recent wave of government job cuts, experts say you may be in for a rockier vacation.
This morning, as millions gear up to spend spring break at some of the nation's most treasured parks, from Yosemite to the Grand Canyon, a warning from park officials that the deep government job cuts could have a noticeable impact on your experience.
The visitors are not going to be able to do the things they want. You know, if you want to bring your family to Yosemite and can't camp, or it takes 4 hours to get into the park, what kind of experience is that?
Nearly 1,000 park employees were laid off on Valentine's Day, and some ripple effects are already being felt, from longer lines to cut hours to closed visitor centers and canceled tours.
We had an experience for 10 options. We only did like 4.
The National Park Service says more than 325 million people visited these sites in 2023, up 4% from the year prior. But now officials say the staffing shortages will make keeping the areas pristine and visits running smoothly more challenging.
In my mind, it's a crisis. If it's the employees that are gone, I'm not sure how the park could stay open.
Some travelers and local businesses are bracing for a spring shakeup.
Businesses that are here in Baker certainly rely on tourism and travelers. So we are unsure what that's going to look like this season.
I was on lunch on February 14th and got a call from my supervisor. I just had to be out and done by 5 p.m. And so it was a mad dash.
Ben Shreves is one of the park employees who recently lost his job.
People were working overtime to provide the best experience. And they were already struggling to do that. And part of that was just a lack of resources. And so now it's just like they have even less of that.
Experts say if you're planning to traverse the parks this spring, to be patient and over-prepare.
There's going to be a big imbalance between the number of people who are going to the parks and the amount of staff that can help them.
And the Park Service has about 20,000 employees. The Trump administration has rolled back some of those firings and says it will hire 3,000 seasonal workers. In the meantime, if you're planning a vacation to a national park, prepare for a slightly different experience. You want to make sure you have your maps, make sure you have everything you need, because there may not be a park ranger or someone to help you out when you're out there.
Big difference.
House narrowly passed its budget plan, including trillions of dollars of possible tax cuts. The measure calls for $4.5 trillion in cuts and a $2 trillion reduction in federal spending. The House barely passed the Republican budget resolution by 2 votes. Meanwhile, Democrats are universally opposing the budget resolution. It's expected to set up a new battle over Medicaid. Officials say massive cuts could be coming to Medicaid due to a proposed $880 billion reduction in health and energy programs. Republicans say this could help curb waste and fraud, but Democrats say the cuts will harm some 80 million Americans who use Medicaid services.
That means not only probably throwing millions of kids off health insurance, it means also making major cutbacks for nursing homes.
And they want to pay for it on the backs of seniors who are living in nursing homes. They want to do it on the backs of Meals on Wheels. They want to do it on the backs of hot lunches for kids.
In the U.S., most seniors in U.S. nursing homes rely on Medicaid to pay for that care.
You can protest all you want outside of departments of this government. You can protest all you want, but the American people disagree with you. You're protecting the bureaucracy. The bureaucracy is not a business. Those are not real jobs producing federal revenue. By the way, they're consuming taxpayer dollars. Those jobs are paid for by the American tax people who work real jobs, earn real income, pay federal taxes, and then pay these federal employees. Federal employees do not deserve their jobs. Federal employees do not deserve their paychecks. And these are jobs that can be fired at will.
What about these guys?
Ще один пункт, на який би я звернув увагу, безумовно, це про економіку договір, але я дуже просив, щоб з'явилось хоча б розуміння, що ми однаково бачимо, що все це є частиною майбутніх гарантій безпеки. І тому навіть в рамковій угоді я дуже хотів, щоб з'явилось хоча б речення гарантії безпеки України.
Will the US remove its nuclear weapons from Europe? Will the Trump administration, on repeatedly pressing Europe that it should carry the burden of its own security, European leaders are openly looking for an alternative protection within the continent. Is this the moment when Europe finally takes its defense into its own hand, or will it not be dependent on the US going forward? More in this next report. Take a look.
Missile strikes have been a key feature of Russia's offensive in Ukraine since the beginning of the war. Many of the systems it fires at the country are capable of also delivering nuclear warheads. From Kinzhal to Oreshnik, Russia has repeatedly used nuclear-capable missiles with conventional payloads. The West too kept raising the nuclear rhetoric, with the US announcing the deployment of long-range missiles in Germany by 2026 to bolster NATO's deterrence against Russia. Ever since the advent of nuclear arms, Europe has been protected by an American nuclear umbrella. It was the United States that promised NATO allies that any nuclear aggression by the Soviet Union and later by Russia would be answered with a barrage of US missiles, which are stored in Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, Italy and Turkey. For 7 decades, this arrangement allowed Western Europe to focus on recovering from the devastation of the 20th century's 2 world wars instead of developing costly nuclear capabilities. Only France and the UK developed small national arsenals, and they were just a fraction of the size of those controlled by the Cold War superpowers. Russia possesses a total of 5,889 nuclear warheads, the largest confirmed stockpile of nuclear warheads in the world, while the Americans have 5,224 nukes in their arsenal. Now, as Trump shifts US foreign policy, the American nuclear umbrella could slowly diminish, leaving Europe vulnerable. Germany sees the writing on the wall. Friedrich Merz, likely to become Germany's next chancellor, calls for a new nuclear security structure led by the UK and France. According to reports, France says it is ready to use its nuclear deterrent to help protect Europe. Fighter jets carrying nuclear weapons could be deployed to Germany. The big question, will the US really move its troops and nukes from Europe as it increasingly keeps going closer into Russia's embrace? The entire European security matrix would go haywire, and the scramble is on to prepare for the future. Bureau Report, Beyond World is One.
الساعة 12 صحيت أفقد الأولاد كلهم. فقدت الأولاد دول 2 دافين كويسين وديهم سقعات يعني أغطيهم. بروح بشوف البنت يعني أحسها ساقعة ثلجة ونزل من أخيرها دم يعني فكيتها وحليتها كفولة وخبط عليها فيش ولا ولد ولا بتنفس ولا حاجة ولا دقات قلب. امبارح لعب فيها ولا لعبها وحممها وعطرها يعني مبسوط عليها. بنت زي القمر تروح مني في ساعة.
هؤلاء الأطفال جاءوا من خارج المستشفى، جاءوا من المخيمات ومن مدارس اللجوء، حيث هناك البرد الشديد ولا يوجد وسائل يعني التدفئة، لا يوجد وقود ولا يوجد كهرباء ولا يوجد غاز ولا يوجد وسائل تدفئة. فمن تعرض يعني هو والعائلة إلى البرد الشديد سوء الحظ فقدنا من 9 حالات 5 حالات. حالة كان عمرها يعني مثلا يوم، بعد مثلا كان عمرها 15 يوم، بعد ساعة من وصولها إلى المستشفى توفت. حالة ثانية بعد 8 ساعات توفت. حالات بعد 4-5 أيام توفت.
Last night, we told you about Israel provoking Syria. We asked if the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is searching for a third conflict zone. Things have now gone a step further. Israel launched a fresh wave of airstrikes on what it said were military sites inside Syria. A war monitor, in fact, said at least 2 people were killed by a strike on one of the sites, the headquarters of a military unit southwest of Damascus, reportedly. Israel's defense minister, meanwhile, described the strikes as part of a new policy aimed at demilitarizing southern Syria, also saying that any attempt by the Syrian regime forces and quote-unquote the country's terrorist organizations to establish themselves in the security zone in southern Syria will be met with fire. Remember, just for context, this comes days after Prime Minister Netanyahu called for demilitarizing the area. So what is known so far about the airstrikes? Israeli warplanes reportedly hit a town south of Syria's capital, as well as the southern province of Daraa late on Tuesday. The Israel Defense Forces have said the presence of military forces and assets in the southern part of Syria pose a threat to the citizens of Israel. The bombardment reportedly came hours after Syria condemned Israel's incursion into the country's south and demanded it withdraw, according to the closing statement of a national summit. Remember earlier, Benjamin Netanyahu had said Israel will not allow Syria's new army or the insurgent group that led the ouster of former President Bashar al-Assad to enter the area south of Damascus, as his government made clear Israeli forces would stay in parts of southern Syria for an indefinite period. Netanyahu's comments have triggered fresh concern over the Israeli presence in a part of southern Syria as Damascus's new leaders attempt to consolidate control after years of civil war. Israel has basically capitalized on the security vacuum as a result of the ouster of Bashar al-Assad. The new Syrian government has not confronted Israeli forces in Syria, and in a way, the Syrian military has little capacity for a fight with its heavily armed southern neighbor. And now, with the latest developments, the concern has only heightened. What happens next will have far-reaching implications for the entire region.
A vessel carrying 1,000 tons of sodium perchlorate, a key ingredient used in making nuclear weapons, has been docked in Iran. This comes just a month after 2 Iranian cargo ships were loaded with the chemical in China. The 2 Iranian container vessels, Golban and Jairan, docked in China back in January to load the sodium perchlorate. Reports suggest that the Golban has returned to Iran, while Jairan is yet to leave China. In January, a Wall Street Journal report said that the Golban loaded a cargo at the Xishan Island near Ningbo in central China. It later left for Taikang port in northern China. The Jairan, on the other hand, has been largely remained stationary at the Liuheng port in central China. Though there was no clarity on when the deliveries were ordered from China, Western authorities say that the sodium perchlorate can be used to create 960 tons of ammonium perchlorate. The chemical can be used to produce at least 260 mid-range ballistic missiles. The 2 vessels are controlled by a US-sanctioned affiliate, Islamic Republic of Iran, shipping lines. Tehran has been increasingly relying on Beijing for its ballistic missiles program ever since Washington sanctioned its nuclear program. Iran's missile inventory has also significantly declined after Israel launched multiple strikes last year.
set you free, bringing the light for all to see. No more tunnels, no more fear. Trump Gaza is finally here. Trump Gaza shining bright, golden future, a brand new light. Feast and dance, the deal is done. Trump Gaza #1. Trump Gaza shining bright, golden future, a brand new light. Feast and dance, the deal is done. Trump Gaza #1.